In a recent interview, Karen Gillan gave some insight into the character of Nebula past Avengers Endgame and into the future of the MCU. We're breaking that down now. What's up, everybody? It's Josh. Welcome back to the channel. Smash that like button like you'll have your organic parts replaced with robotics if you do not. And let's get right into this video. I think one of the most interesting parts about a post-Endgame MCU is just how the myriad of different characters are going to respond and act after all of that insanity. I mean, Thanos attacking, the snap itself, the blip, and then the second invasion by Thanos and another snap. This is just crazy stuff, not to mention all of the little intricacies that happen to different characters along that journey. It's super wild to consider what's going to be happening next for a lot of these characters. Well, we've now got some insight from Karen Gillan herself talking about the Nebula character. So I want to read what she recently said to reporters and then sort of speculate about what that means and what we think we can expect from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, considering what we know from some leaks and just what people are talking about. Now, I'm going to read right from murphysmultiverse.com. By the way, they revamped that site. It looks super clean. Can't wait for all the new content coming out on that site. I'm going to be there quite a bit. But yeah, I'll read right from the article, then we'll speculate about what I think all of this means. Okay, so the article starts out by saying James Gunn has taken a lot of liberties in adapting Guardians of the Galaxy on the screen. From turning Yondu into a space hillbilly to making Ronan more of a popcorn fart than a cosmic powerhouse, Gunn's MCU versions of some classic characters haven't always landed with me. One character who puts a check in the plus column, however, is Karen Gillan's Nebula. After being abused and tortured at the hands of Thanos, Nebula is finally free of her father's cruelty and able to move in a new direction. Gillan talked about Nebula's past and potential future recently at GalaxyCon Live. She said, "I'm interested to maybe try and take her to a place now where she's starting to rebuild her life." She talks about how Nebula has just had a really hard time of it, and though she started out as a villain, audiences have come to see her with sympathy and empathy. She goes on to say, "I was able to use a lot of psychology essays on that character because she's someone who has dealt with abuse from her father and from such a young age. Not to make it too heavy, but he pitted the siblings against each other. She would be inferior and the scapegoat, while the other one was the golden child. It's actually quite a common thing to happen within families and siblings. I don't have any siblings, so it's something I really had to read up on. In Avengers Endgame, she had to face the source of her abuse, then actually watch him get eliminated from her life. I'm sort of thinking about future Nebula in the sense like, what is she going to be like now that that person's abuse has gone out of her life? How is she going to build herself back up again? Because it's an odd feeling, I think, for someone who's been abused by a parent because they still love them and they're sad that they're gone, but also they hate them and they're glad that they're gone." So really powerful and just interesting things said by Karen Gillan about the character of Nebula. So let's kind of get into this a little bit, because I do believe that a lot of these actors do create sort of a collaborative process with their directors, and James Gunn, I think, is a person that will sort of collaborate with these different actors to consider where the arc is going from here. Now, there was a script that James Gunn had already created in sort of conjunction with what was going on in Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. The reason we know this is because when there was all of that controversy for old tweets from James Gunn, we had the actors sort of saying, hey, we can make this movie without Gunn as the director, but we must use his script, talking about how they didn't want to just remove Gunn completely from the history and legacy of the Guardians of the Galaxy's franchise. Well, lucky for us all, that all got sorted out, and James Gunn is, of course, back. He is doing the Suicide Squad movie over at DC, and he's coming back to do Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. I say all of that to basically depict to you that there is a plan that Gunn already had for the character of Nebula and for the characters of all of the Guardians of the Galaxy, but I assume he's going to do some sort of pickups, rewrites, change things along the way, and there's always a collaborative process with actors and directors. So what Gillan is saying here is not just her sort of espousing beliefs about her character. It will probably have an impact on where they decide to take that character moving forward. And the character of Nebula has had one of the most interesting journeys of any character in the MCU. She has started out as a straight up villain, very much hated by a lot of different people, and by the time Endgame finishes, she is a sympathetic character. And what also is really weird and interesting about that is this sibling that she had this relationship with, Gamora. The Gamora that we saw that went on a journey of self-discovery, that sort of found her place with a new family with Peter and the members of the Guardians of the Galaxy. That Gamora is gone. And so now there is a Gamora in our timeline, but is not that Gamora. And so in some ways, Nebula and Gamora have sort of switched places, where Gamora might be seen as more antagonistic or villainous, and Nebula herself is probably like full-on face-turned at this point. She's full-on hero, full-on sympathetic character, especially now that Thanos is completely gone. She's going to be hanging out with the Guardians of the Galaxy and sort of finding herself. Now, we definitely think that the search for Gamora will be a big part of the plot in Guardians of the Galaxy 3, but there's again a sort of continued thread of family and family stories. Right now, according to some leaks and rumors out there, we will discover that Drax's daughter is actually still alive, and he's going to want to find and be reunited with his daughter. We're going to find out that the High Evolutionary created Rocket Raccoon, and he's going to come face to face with his father in a lot of ways by facing the High Evolutionary. And according to a lot of those leaks, Nebula and Peter Quill are going to become close. Now, I don't think there's going to be a love triangle sort of thing going on there, but I do think that those two characters, especially because they both really do love Gamora, they're going to be united in that sense, and it's going to be really interesting to watch their friendship develop over time. Another really interesting element that just popped into my head here is the death of Tony Stark. I mean, Tony, in a lot of ways, was one of the people that first pulled the humanity out of Nebula. After the events of Infinity War, Nebula and Tony just being on that ship was a kind of big part of her character arc. In some ways, Tony helped her see that side of herself, and Tony is, of course, gone. He sacrificed himself for all of these different people all across the universe, and I think in some ways you could see the character of Nebula, wanting to, make that mean something, wanting to be better herself because of the sacrifice that Stark had. So I think it's really interesting, this whole abuse element and the element with that parent being gone. It runs perfectly with the themes of family and some of the more difficult themes of family that the Guardians of the Galaxy series has tackled thus far. And I can imagine really interesting ways that issue will be tackled again with the third volume and with new developments for all of these characters, echoing in a lot of ways what Karen Gillan talked about in this report. But that's what she said, and speculation about what we think it means. I, of course, want to know what you think about all of this in the comments section below. And now let's shout out Reclaimer343. Yes, indeed, it was Rogue Squadron that I was talking about with the flight simulator that I used to play on Nintendo 64. So shout out to you, Reclaimer, and now let's ask another nerd card question before we get out of here. I want to know, from what year in the timeline is the Gamora that we now have in our main universe from? What timeline or what year was that Gamora plucked from when she was brought into our timeline? Answer that question in the comment section below. If you're watching this video on June 8th, I want to tell you that tonight at 8 p.m. we are doing another community live stream over on our live streaming channel. We will be talking about the upcoming Star Wars stuff on Disney Plus with live action Thrawn and Ezra Bridger. Make sure you stop on by for that. And then on Wednesday night at 8 p.m., we are doing the second episode of the Nerd Card Showdown, our new trivia show. It's a ton of fun. Awesome teams will be going at it then. You're going to want to come by for that. As I always say, I hope you're having an awesome and a nerdy day, and I'll see you in the next video.